I'm proud to announce that today's sponsor is none other than Rotor Riot themselves, the company for which Chad Nowak flew for quite a while. You can use the discount code ROTORROLLINS in order to get 10% off any Hype Train motor purchase. Use it. Love it. Go get yourself some motors. I know that I did. And to tell you about your motors today, let's listen to Johnny. Johnny, tell us about what today's motor is.
The Rotor Riot Hype Train Freestyle motor was the first official product designed by Rotor Riot team members, including Chad Nowak. The motor now features the second generation Hype Train bell, which is made from aircraft grade 7075 aluminum and has been reinforced, taking durability to the next level. The Hype Train Freestyle is sure to stand out with the customized orange colored stator and silver coated windings, altogether a fusion of great design and technology. As far as performance, the Hype Train Freestyle motor is built with a 2306 stator, which makes the motor very powerful and smooth, and gives it more responsiveness in the lower end of the throttle curve. Every aspect of the motor has been designed to achieve optimal efficiency, and the windings have been specified to produce a balanced 2450 kV, which makes the Hype Train Freestyle suitable for a wide variety of propeller and battery combinations. As with all Hype Train motors, the open bottom base optimizes the flow of air through the stator to prevent overheating, and also saves weight by removing excess material. The revolutionary 16 by 16 millimeter mounting screw pattern, originally introduced with the Hype Train Freestyle motors, opens up new design possibilities while still maintaining backward compatibility with legacy frames. Moreover, the bell is held in place with a small screw rather than a C-clip, enabling easy bell replacements.
One question that I never thought to ask, but that Chad answered, and it was awesome, was how many months did Chad Nowak spend flying line of sight before he ever put goggles on? And was he one of the first people to fly in acro/rate mode? You get to find out today.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you a man that needs very little introduction. He's sitting in front of a bunch of shoes, but that's just because he likes shoes a lot, as you can see. But ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Chad Nowak, aka Final Glide AUS, a man who has been on the drone scene for a long time. Thank you for coming out, Chad.
You're welcome. And I'd only say I'm an old school pilot, but probably gone back to a bit of a nobody now. I think a lot of the new pilots probably have no idea who I am. I'm happy with that, but always happy to chat.
Well, I'll tell you
it was quite funny.
Go ahead.
I contacted you because I watched some of your interviews and just wanted to say good job on doing some good interviews without hype and all that sort of stuff. And that's where I remember you said, "Hey, do you want to get on here and do an interview?" And my first reaction was, "Does anybody care about listening to me these days?"
I think they do. I think they do.
Always happy to chat, but yeah, happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Okay, well, more than welcome, man. How are you doing today? How is the?
I'm doing pretty good. So full disclosure, I'm currently in mine and my partner's bedroom because I haven't been doing too well health-wise in the last week or two. Been coming down with some real bad joint pain and that sort of stuff. So coming to you live from my bed so that I don't have to hobble down the stairs. So if the background doesn't look as fancy as some of your previous guests, that's why.
Right, man. You know, I can honestly say you're the first one to bring high heels into the interview. Which, I mean, I think that speaks very well for you.
Yeah, well, look, I like to be unique. I like to be bold. I like to be different. And what better ways than to introduce high heels into the situation?
There you go. Exactly.
With the way that my ankle is right now, I'm not going to be putting any on, unfortunately.
Oh, man, I can't even.
But I tell you, I rock them. I own them, and I'm pretty damn good. I challenged my girlfriend to a race the other day, and I put some on, and then just like a set of spuds, as we like to say here in Australia, and really hurt my foot, and she hasn't stopped laughing at me ever since.
Oh no!
It's like, wearing heels is not that hard.
Yes, no, I can't even imagine. So I've never put a pair on, and I leave it to my wife to keep hers going. So tell me, I like to start out the interviews with your origin story. Like so to give people a little background, you've been in this hobby for quite some time. Like, when did you start flying? How did you get interested? What brought you into FPV specifically and drones in general?
Well, I guess and I'll try to be quick.
Take your time.
I think Chad Kaffer was 45 minutes. I'm going to see if I can do better than that or something like that. Ever since I was a young kid, I've always been sort of engrossed in aviation. My parents have always commented when I was a kid living up in a little town outside of Bendigo, Victoria, Australia, where I'd stare at planes as they'd fly from horizon to horizon. Always wanted to get into it. And as a young teenager, I got a chance to build my first control line aircraft. Then I got into, because I didn't have much money being a teenager, got my first remote control, and I got a glider because I couldn't afford a motor. I figured, well, I'll learn to fly, then I'll get a motor. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the whole gliding scene. So the whole final glide is a gliding term, and really enjoyed the challenges involved in gliding, similar to sailing a yacht versus a powerboat. It's the skill of using Mother Nature to get you around rather than just full throttle and things like that. Still got into powered RC planes and things like that, but just never really got that interested. And sort of late 90s, early 2000s, I was heavily involved in remote control gliding F3B competitions and open thermal competitions, and very competitive person, stupidly competitive. My goal was to get on the Australian team so I could go and fly in the worlds over in Europe and things like that. Tried for many years and would constantly sort of get like fourth or third or stuff like that, where you had to get first or second, just constantly miss out on it. And it got to a point where I stopped enjoying it and I started taking it too seriously. So had an opportunity to learn to fly full-size gliders in the early to mid 2000s, and sort of put all the RC stuff to one side, got stuck into full-scale sailplanes, and just I tend to hyper-focus on things. So my life revolved around full-scale sailplanes. I lived at the gliding club. Anything aviation that I got a chance to jump into, because I didn't have any money, people would offer me rides and things, and I'd go, whether it be helicopter, fixed-wing powered aircraft, gliders, motor gliders, and all that sort of stuff. And quickly racked up a fair bit of experience, became a level 2 instructor for that, and also became RTOA, so our Regional Technical Officer for Airworthiness for my state for gliders. I got into the engineering and the airworthiness and the manufacturing and maintenance side of things, so I got a lot of maintenance qualifications and things like that. That's where I learned about dealing with regulators like CASA and the FAA, and I was a CASA representative for a number of years there in my role. Then got into competitions as well. And once again, being stupidly competitive, my goal was to get on the Australian team so I could go to the Worlds over in Europe. I knew I couldn't afford it, but hey, get invited on there and I'll work out how I can afford it. So for the next sort of 7 years, took that stupidly seriously. Once again, got so serious that I got to a point where I was like, this is my hobby. Why am I taking it so seriously? But on top of that, the competition that I'm now involved with, my life is also at risk. So if you make a big bad decision in RC sailplanes, you crash a $3,000 glider. In full scale sailplanes, you can kill yourself. So that's when I sort of stepped back from that a little bit, had a little bit of okay, I need to do something else. And my eldest son was turning 8, and he was showing interest in RC stuff again, planes and lots of stuff. And he lived at the gliding field with me as well. And I thought, hey, this might be a good father-son thing. So I went to a model air show, and he couldn't stop looking at all the stuff. And I went, hey, do you want to get some stuff? So bought a DX18 and bought a remote control, like a remote control glider, about motor glider and a fast wing and things like that, and flew that around for about 12 months. And that was when, around sort of 2013 is when I came across Flight Test. started religiously just watching it because it was interesting content, and got to know all the usual characters in there that we all know these days. And that's when I saw David Vinderstill was in there, the whole tricopter scene, and I was just like, this is really interesting. And the first time that there was around about that time also that I saw Trappy in his hill mountain diving videos and his wings and things like that.
Right.
And I was just waiting for the right moment, and the whole Batbone flight test FPV stuff, it just seemed right. And what really intrigued me was, first of all, like, okay, cool, it's another avenue for an interesting thing that me and my son can do. As it turns out, I enjoyed it more than my son. But it was very interesting because what I loved about the remote control side of thing was the carefree nature. Do whatever you want, build whatever you want, go and fly it. But if it crashes, who cares? If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Where the full-scale flying, the actual experience of being up there, you can't beat. But your life is at risk, so you have to be a lot more selective about what you do. In my glider, would I like to go and fly underneath that bridge? Sure, I would. Pretty stupid idea. I'll get in trouble with the regulator because it's a pretty stupid thing to do. And if I cock things up, then my life is at risk. And the wonderful thing that I saw with FPV was being able to mold those two together, having the carefree nature of RC, but also being in the cockpit and experiencing hitting that gap and doing that thing. And so that's kind of what took me to it. And I couldn't afford goggles or anything like that to begin with. Plus, I also saw the benefit of line of sight flying. So for the first 8 months, this is going December 2013, I think, is when I ordered a Batbone tricopter. That was my first thing, and had a KK2 on it and all that sort of stuff. Wow. And I thought, I'll get that until I can afford goggles. And then flying line of sight, I instantly recognized the importance of learning to fly line of sight. So I went, no, I'm not going to go FPV until I am at least proficient in line of sight. And that's where I got my love of line of sight, freestyle, and all that sort of stuff, like similar to 3D helis, but not quite. And that was where I actually started doing a lot of the early development as well, because when I got into it, everyone was flying in attitude mode or ratitude mode or horizon mode. No one was flying in rate mode or the mode that everyone flies in now. And as someone who was a fixed-wing pilot and so forth, the whole not limiting yourself to like 30 degrees just really limited what you could do. And I remember starting a big movement on the forums going, and why are you flying in that? They're going, rate mode is stupid. Why would you ever want to fly with that? And it was only when I started bringing out videos and following people like Warthox, who's now Quad Mover and that sort of stuff, people actually thought, wow, there's a little bit more freedom on there. And on top of that, there were things like everyone's so used to takes air mode for granted now. We didn't have air mode back in those days. If you got the stick below, say, a third throttle, not only would you lose gyro control, all 4 motors or 3 motors or however many motors you had, they'd all stop. The thing would just fall out of the sky. And so I'd be flying rate mode, and I'm used to, like, this is a tricopter with a KK2, and I'm trying to do loops and things like this. And I'm used to my fixed wing days where you're full throttle going up, and as you're going over the top, you back off the throttle until you zero throttle as you come back down again. And of course, I'd always hit that threshold, and the thing would just fall out of the sky, and I'd lose control, and it'd hit the ground before I actually got control back again. So once again, I was like, why have we got it so that the motors stop at a third throttle? This is stupid. And of course, all the developers were like, that's just the way that it is, and there's no other way of doing it. So I started looking around, and I came across the whole 3D heli throttle hold situation, and that's when I developed the throttle hold thing. What Steele uses is just what I taught him back in the day, and he's stuck with that kind of thing. And this whole system here is what I was actually showing to Boris. I'm sitting there going, this is what you've got to do. Boris didn't like the idea of having multiple switches to flick, so he developed air mode as a more automated version of what we were already flying. Gotcha. So that the early days of line of sight flying, there was a lot of development that was going on there, and it wasn't until, I don't know, late 2014 that I actually purchased my first set of goggles and went and flew. And I really, at that time, guys like Juz, Metal Danny, Boris B, they were all the big guys that I looked up to and so forth. And I bought my first blackout frame. And I bought it straight away because I heard it was just about to go to be put on flight test and at RC Model Reviews, and I knew it's going to be really popular, and it's going to be out of stock. And oh, sorry, I thought I missed you there. Good. Lost you there for a second. Okay. Yeah, so I ended up buying that because I knew it was going to be out of stock, and Blackout is just up the road from me, where he made all that sort of stuff. So I got that. Got into it and just bought a cheap old, what was it? A Mobius. Mobius was my first camera. And what I really liked about it was there was a combination of the freedom plus also telling a story and videography. So some of the things that I studied back in high school was videography and video and entertainment and things like that. I really enjoyed the filming and the videoing side of things. I never really followed through with it, but it was just a nice hobby of mine. And in the full-scale sailplane, I made a couple of videos and things like that in the past, and really enjoyed that side of things. And so what I really loved about the whole FPV thing was the fact that I could fly carelessly, but be in the cockpit and film it and tell a story and video something which is kind of like, it's not a show-off thing, but it's more a case of, it's a video version of my photo album. This is what I did today. And so just started doing that because I really enjoyed it. Didn't have any goals or ideas of what I wanted to do. And Final Glide Oz is literally it's a YouTube channel that I started up for gliding because people were like, hey, you're making these YouTube videos, which I was burning on DVDs and just giving to friends at the gliding club. Like, here you go. And they're going, there's this new thing called YouTube that you can actually share it on there. I'm going, that's a stupid idea. Why would you ever put it on the internet? But I was a late comer, and I eventually started doing that. And so Final Glide was my profile name on a lot of these forums, which is a gliding term, and Final Glide Oz because Final Glide was already taken. It's like a Final Glide Oz. There we go, done, simple.
Right.
Not much thought process in that. So yeah, just started filming stuff and putting it on there because it was cool and I enjoyed doing it, and I just love sharing it. I never really monetized anything on there. It was never in I can make money. Didn't care. Never really took all that seriously, and for whatever reason, whatever I was making was gaining interest in people, and I was getting a lot more comments and feedback going, really love your work, want to see more. And I'm like. You never do it. I do it for myself, but I mean, good comments from other people are always a good push in the back to go and do more. It's like, okay, that felt good. Okay, I'm going to do some more of this. And I remember I was actually at a gliding competition. I was at a nationals down in Victoria, trying to get on the Australian gliding team, and
right.
And I'm reading my emails midway through the competition, and there's an email from Immersion RC saying, "Hey, would you like to be a sponsored pilot?" And I'd already had quite a number of sponsorship offers. Like I think Get FPV had already offered a sponsorship, and a lot of other these ones, but they came along with like binder full contracts that you had to sign. You had to bring a video out every week, and you had to use their product. And I'm sitting there going, no, I'm not interested in that. I don't want you to take control of what I'm doing. So just ended up knocking them all back. And Immersion RC was just like, hey, well, we'd like to sponsor you. And I'm like, well, I already use a whole heap of your stuff and I already like it. So yeah, what the hell? And it became my hobby's kind of being partly paid for here. This is pretty cool. And shortly after that is when Scott Refsland announced the first drone nationals in Sacramento. This is early 2015, and I actually got an invite, and I actually knocked it back, and I just said, look, I can't afford or justify going out to Sacramento. I've got a busy job. I've got 2 kids, single wage earner. I don't have the opportunity to do that. Knocked it back, and about a month later, Immersion RC said, "You're going to go to that thing?" I said, "Love to, but I can't afford it." And they said, "Well, would you change your mind if we paid for the airfares?" And I went,
"Wow,
okay."
Yeah.
And like, I didn't even really know what the deal was there. All I knew it was a race, and it was an opportunity for me to meet people that I'd become friends with online and never met. People like Chapu, Tommy, Steele, and various other people. But those three guys that I'd already become quite close with online. And it's like, hey, cool, free trip. Managed to get my friend Mark to tag along, got his airfares paid for as well. May as well have a trip with a friend. Get to go and meet some new friends in there and just go and have a good time. And my goal there was, this is when I was just winding down on the whole gliding competition. Once again, things were getting so serious, and I was hating the gliding scene because of it. Not because of the gliding, because of the seriousness of it. And I went, you know what? I'm going to go to this gliding competition. I'm going to practice a little bit, but I'm going to go there and I'm going to have fun. My number one goal is to have fun. If I do well, that's a bonus. So if you ever look at the old footage there of me, it's me and Mark just fooling around being Aussie larrikins. I didn't care. I didn't care if I got kicked out because I wasn't following all the rules. I didn't care if I was the fastest or the slowest. I went there to go and have fun, and it was only on the last day that I'm like, oh, holy crap, I could actually win all of this, that it sort of hit me.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's all kind of snowballed from there. Once I won the drone nationals, that's when I got invited to Hawaii. And when I got to Hawaii, that's when I met up with Chad Kappa and met up with all the Tommy and Steele and Carlos again. And the whole Rotor Riot thing started, and it all kind of just blew up from there. And when I went to Hawaii, I had been working at my job for 18 years, and it was a job that I absolutely hated.
Wow.
Had an unplanned child born when I was 23, 24 or something like that. So I had to put aside all of my dreams and hopes for any future things, and I just stayed with the job that I happened to have. And by that time, I was taking antidepressants. I was hating life. I was just not happy with life at all, and I wanted to change. And at that time, I had a long service. So here in Australia, if you work for 10 years, you get every 10 years, you get 2 months off work. It's called long service. And I also had a whole bunch of other days which I hadn't taken. And it was kind of like, if I don't do something now, I'm going to go postal. Literally just went, you know what, screw this. I've been invited. Like, I went over to America and won the first unofficial world championships at something, and my boss was like, get back to work, we don't care. They weren't supportive, and I was just like, I'm over this job. So I took my long service and went to Hawaii. Had no idea. I was just like, all I know is in 2 months' time, when my long service when it finishes up, I'm not going back to work. I don't know where I'm going. I've got no other opportunities if I don't want to go back. But I'm just going to spend a month and a half just going, you know what, I want to enjoy life because I think I deserve a break. Went over there, met up with Chad Kappa, came back, then started talking about the whole Rotor Riot thing, then got invited to the F3 Expo Freestyle Masters.
Yeah.
And while I was over there, in between Hawaii and F3 Expo, Chad Kappa started talking to me about Rotor Riot, and he's saying, hey, do you want to completely pull up stumps of your life and start a new career? And I'm like, well, I really hate the job that I've got. I'm in a relationship which is dying, and I don't have any money, and like I've got to do something. So went over to F3 Expo, and while we were there, we filmed the first Rotor Riot episode, came back home again, and we looked at the footage and we talked about it, everyone, and that's when like all of us are going, you know what, I think there's something there. And literally in the space of 2 weeks, I went, okay, cool, I'm going to quit my job of 18 years. My relationship ended. I said goodbye to my parents or my extended family, said goodbye to my 2 kids, put everything I owned in 2 suitcases, and went to America on a holiday visa, meaning I can't work and I can't make money, with the hope of sometime in the future that I would get a work visa through Rotor Riot. And when I left my job, I got about 20 grand in the bank. And this is the first a serious risk. Everything else I'd always been like, I've got a family, got to do the right thing. So, and I'd also never really traveled. Like going to America and going to Hawaii was probably the scariest thing that I ever did. I only went because my friend Mark actually said, I'll come with you because I've been to America as well and I'll hold your hand. I wasn't a risk taker. So much of what I did was so far out of my comfort zone. But it was a kind of a thing of like, if you don't do this and stay at your job, you are going to commit suicide. So what the hell? You've got nothing to lose. So I was kind of at that stage. So just on a whim going, okay, I'm just going to go until I run out of money and see where I go. And the rest is kind of history. It was literally 2 months of being in a different time zone every 2 weeks, living in hotel rooms and hallways and being jet lagged left, right, and center, and having a great time in terms of exploring myself, but just surviving in the reality of it. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I don't regret anything of it. It's taught me a lot. But I talk to a lot of people about the whole experience, and I think it's funny because a lot of people they see you for 5 minutes on a YouTube video and they think they have a good understanding of your life. And there were people out there that were genuinely thinking that I was on Ferrari wage earning, that I could buy a Ferrari if I wanted. And I'm like, you don't get it. I'm in this crappy hotel in China worrying about how I'm going to pay for my kids' school fees back at home. Yeah. But look, I digress. I think I've did that cover my origin story?
It has been truly awesome having Chad on the show. I'd like to take this moment to point out that Chad's been going through some medical difficulties, and if you are of the opinion to do so, send thoughts and prayers his way. He posted a little bit about it. I'm sure you can find it if you follow him on social media. He's doing better. He's out of the hospital now, but there's still a long road to recovery. He was actually sick in the video that we recorded, but he didn't make a big deal about it, and apparently, from what I understand, it went downhill after that. But he is now recovering yet again. I'd like to thank him once again for coming on the show. It really was amazing to interview him. He is kind of an idol of mine, and I feel blessed to be able to just hear his story. I'd also like to thank Rotor Riot. They sponsored all of these episodes. You can go to Rotor Riot for a 10% discount on any Hype Train motor. You can find the link in the description below. And I'd also like to thank my patrons. My patrons are really what keep me going, and they help me to stay focused on the things that matter the most. Thank you to my patrons. And if you'd like to find a link to my Patreon, or if you'd like to find a link to Rotor Riot, you can find a link in the description below. And with that, I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.